Good morning, everybody. Welcome to, or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. Welcome to 5 Tips to Empower Your Workforce. My name is Jay Emerlinson. I am a global evangelist and transformation engineering lead here at Software AG, and I'll be your speaker for today. It's a fantastic opportunity for all of us to have an important conversation about workforce enablement, workforce empowering. Of course, all of that comes around to the practices you put in place, the technology you have to enable you, and the way of working that inspires. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Today, I'm going to have a share of a little bit of my thoughts and best practices about this. And then I'll show you how this actually works within the Eris platform itself. Yes, I know, of course, things come back to technology, but here's the truth, is that a fool with a tool is still a fool. So we want to start the conversation about giving you the ideas behind this that help you to make the right decisions to bring people together around process and architecture. That in mind, let me share my screen and let's get moving with this presentation. So let's ask the important question, why are we all here, right? We're here to empower our workforce. And so, what does that mean from my perspective? And by the way, just as a note for you, this was I love him very dearly. Philip Hack is a little bit unwell today, so he won't be joining us in the conversation, but he helped prepare some of the presentation. So massive kudos to him. So let's look at some numbers that sort of give us an understanding of why we want to do this kind of thing, why we want to approach workforce enablement as a core part of how we make people feel connected to process architecture and the organization. 25%. So what Gallagher State of the Sector says is that communication allows you to empower your employees to deliver the best possible service. We need to communicate to our people. We need to bring them into the fold to help them to achieve their goal of supporting our customers the best way they can. I believe truly in my heart that people want to do the right thing. And the thing that steps in the way of this, for the most part, is they don't know what the right thing is. I don't think that they're malicious. I think that they're truly just confused. So let's see if we can help people deliver their best. 29% says, well, we want to be able to manage the risks of operation. And one of the key parts of risk is managing communication. And communication can help bring transparency, can help ensure that the community line of communication stays open during any sort of interruptions or challenges to the way you do business, and be able to interact with people in a way that helps to bring people together at those moments of importance and make sure those don't happen as often. 47% said company agility is key, and communication to all of our employees allows us to adapt quickly to changing circumstances, changing environments. That's really important. If you want to stay agile as an organization, it's impossible to do so if people in your organization don't understand what you're doing next. That agility, well, it becomes bogged down by layers of barrier of communication. And 67% of people said strategic alignment is a core part of how they're going to deliver their business repeatably, sustainably, and with growth in mind. So communication allows you to create that clarity and alignment around the organization from strategy to execution. A phrase that I like to say is we want to create an unbroken chain of influence between a strategic pillar and between the people who deliver the services and products at the very bottom of the tree, your end executors who help to collectively achieve that strategic pillar. An unbroken chain of influence allows us to see the connectivity between everything. And today, we're going to learn about how that kind of thing comes to play with workforce enablement. So what is this from my perspective, this workforce enablement we're looking to achieve? Well, first, we have strategies and best practices and policies that we want to bring together as an organization to understand what we're trying to do with it. And executors, we have job aids, enablement tools, motivation for why they do their job. People want to know what they're doing and why. Together, that handshake is our workforce management and the enablement that goes into it. So as you might imagine, today we're going to talk about a lot of the things you see here, how we can define those strategies, best practices, and policies with as little work as possible, taking the ideas from the head and putting it onto the page. And then how we can consume that and share that with a larger community seamlessly to provide the tools they need just in time to do the best job they can. So let's talk about workforce management, workforce enablement. What does this mean to me? What does it mean to a lot of folks? And let's define some terms, because, or at least the context behind these terms, because I'll be saying a lot of things in today's presentation, and I'd prefer it if all of this was sort of hashed out up front. So what is digital workforce management all about? First and foremost, it's a way of aligning your employees with expected ways of working. Essentially, you're creating collateral assets, and I think you have plenty of them. If you use Eris today, they're in your repository. If you don't, or use any other sort of process management or modeling tool, that stuff is captured in your documentation. But documentation does not itself make the process run. That goes through automation and enablement. Automation, we're not going to talk too much about today, because that's the technical and implementation of processes that are meant to be realized in systems. Today, we're talking about the people side. So how do I align people with those expectations, the new ways of working? Now, the next thing to know about these ways of working is that they're often context-based. Different employees, perhaps people even with the same role in different geographies, might have different jobs they have to do, different ways of working. And that regional variation is an important part of how you deliver repeatable business to specific geographies and their needs, meeting people where they are. That means we need to meet our employees where they are. The context behind how they do work needs to be given to them on a platter rather than forcing them to go find it. And that's something that, by tailoring the way in which they interact with a platform like Eris, you can make it so it's easier for them to find what they want and be able to contribute back from their perspective. And we also need to address this idea of change. We are in a time of great digital disruption, great disruption in the marketplace. My goodness, global supply chain. We look at global conflict and geopolitics. We look at changing expectations of customers, changing expectations of employees. I mean, my goodness, it's been a time of great change. So we need to continuously adapt with our approach to meet our people, as long as our customers change their approach, and our regulators change their expectations. It's important to keep up motivation. While these pressures may affect the business, the people ultimately deliver the business. And if you can't motivate them and reach them, it's harder to deliver on your promises. So let's zoom in. A high degree of digitalization is important right now in companies managing knowledge and helping their people deliver on their services. So that digitization happens in a digital repository. People who are familiar with these sorts of enterprise repositories know that well. And digital workforce management comes about as a result of the information captured there. A common understanding, aligned expectations across the organization and to each individual employee. Okay, this is a good context. So what are my 5 tips that I have? Well, before I tell you those 5 tips, because everyone's excited about that, I want to push it back to you in the audience. I'm going to take a pause for a moment, and you've got a chat box. Please use that chat box, because I'd love to hear from you what some of the challenges you have are. I'm going to briefly stop sharing my screen here and type in, what challenges have you experienced in reaching your end executors? The translation between your process design and their execution. What are some common challenges you've seen? I'll start with mine. One of my common challenges I see oftentimes is that processes are too generic. People can't see themselves in the process. But what I have Raul say, process adoption is a big challenge for them. And I would agree. Process adoption, getting people to change their ways of working to a new way once you have a new process defined, is a big challenge for a lot of organizations. They get sort of bogged down in this challenge of communication, people not knowing what they have to do next and not knowing when things change, notifications. Other challenges people have with this, I'll leave you for a moment to think, what challenges make your workforce feel less connected to your process and architecture specialists? Integration into the organization. Yeah, that is true. We often find these BPM specialist groups are in silos. They're sort of separate from the organization. They don't feel like they're part of the team. It's an ivory tower telling you what you're doing, and you don't feel like you can contribute to that. You can't even understand it. I absolutely understand that. Measuring compliance, that's a huge part. You don't know whether or not your employees are actually doing the tasks that you tell them to do. And there are lots of tools for that, including things like process mining, which we aren't going to get into today. But that's a big challenge for a lot of organizations. Identification and involvement of stakeholders. Yeah, that's a big piece of the puzzle. Creating that stakeholder map and understanding who's affected by those changes. That's a big challenge for a lot of organizations undergoing transformation. I remember sitting through an ERP transformation years ago at a utilities company, and we probably spent, I don't know, let's say the first 3 months of the project, we didn't do any work on changing anything. We spent the first 3 months understanding who we would affect by making any changes. And that's a very time consuming and resource intensive process. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get into this whole discussion. But there are ways to make that timeline a little bit shorter and to involve people asynchronously and digitally, so that they don't feel like they always have to be called and interviewed and sort of tracked down. We don't want to have a bunch of bloodhounds going to look for everyone affected. We want to bring them organically into the conversation. And we have standard processes and flexible processes. These need to work beside and with each other. And there are guardrails, but the business is end responsible, but they don't have a lot of time and don't feel the need to define processes. Jiro, and I gotta tell you, that's that comment, and I wanna highlight that comment is fantastic. This is a really amazing message that I wanted to pin this for everyone, because this is I don't know you very well. This is a really common challenge, and I see this with a lot of people and struggling to get this when they don't have enough time to define the process. They feel like they don't need to define the process because it's too much of a cost. There's not enough value to the organization. Actually, I'll share this whole thing. Let me tell you this. Today's conversation at the end, I'm hoping that I can convince you that there are faster ways to capture information, that there are faster ways to share that information, to retrieve that information, and to govern that information. And today's conversation is going to be 5 tips for making this move faster and work better. And so, with that in mind, I'm going to quickly go back to my presentation and start talking a little bit about those tips, so you're not just left wondering. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. That's fantastic. And also, I'm so sorry. This is a lot of things going on, and I can see why you've joined us here in today's conversation. So let's first meet the people we affect, our business architecture family. Who are we enabling and managing? And I take a look at this from sort of 4 roles gathered around the same computer, talking about business architecture. The first is our John, designer, who wants to be able to turn knowledge into value, right? Wants to build process designs, be able to share this ideas for the future of the organization and the processes that are going to underpin it. And they need a tool and a practice that allows them to quickly turn those ideas into something that people actually do. Many of you on the line probably fit into this category, creators of knowledge within the business architecture framework. We also have Ethan, one of our process owners, who is responsible for the delivery of that process, which means they want to validate. He wants to validate this work. He wants evidence. Let's talk about compliance evidence. And he needs access to just-in-time expertise for his teams where he can't afford to pay for expensive training. He wants to simply give them the resources that they need when it's time to go and be able to see that they're actually doing the job. Of course, underlying all these, underpinning these, is Amy, one of our architects, who configures and manages our entire business architecture environment. A simple digital system with minimal ongoing configuration that can reach people where they are and be able to provide the services they need, so it's a high delivery, a high level of acceptance from our larger community. And we have Ava, by far the most common of our roles across the organization, our end users, our end executors, who want to understand what her job is right now and how to do it. And those questions, she has so many questions. She wants some access just in time. I talk about this idea that it would be so beneficial to all of our end users across the organization if they had somebody sitting next to them who simply knew all the information they needed to know, and they could ask them a question. Hey, how do I do this? Hey, what do I do about that? What a useful tool that would be. And in today's conversation, I'll tell you why the AI system that we've you've pioneered here, and why AI in general can help to make this kind of thing come to life, particularly for someone like Ava. So, what are the 5 tips that I've got that underpin all these? And obviously, the technology that I love and support, you can see it on my shirt, is Eris. And Eris as a technology does this particularly well, but these are more generic. If you know, listen, if you want to start the conversation somewhere else, love you nonetheless. But let's start let's see what we think is a principle. The first here is that we want to imagine and turn that imagination into reality. So imagine models into existence. The idea is that, just like was brought up before, the fantastic comment about taking too much time, we want to shortcut the brain to computer interface. How do I turn ideas into pictures? Translate the language seamlessly without having to worry about getting it right, with the right methodology, like right off the bat. There's a huge barrier to entry to become involved in the knowledge creation process of BPM. I don't actually believe that's true, by the way. I think that there are way, way, way more tools and trainings and self-service knowledge that you can grab. But a lot of people do believe that's true, that there's a big barrier to entry to get into BPM. So, how do we remove or reduce that barrier so that you can make things easier? Well, we happen to think Gen AI is a great way to try and lower that barrier to entry for taking knowledge and contributing it to an enterprise reality. The next is we want to control this knowledge. And so today I'm going to show you what it means to publish and approve a process. Something that makes it easy for people to, in a single step, validate the knowledge that's being captured so that you're not looking at an organizational chaos as a result of this, and be able to simplify and shortcut this process of validation, publishing, and establishing and maintaining a source of truth. Nothing hurts you more than having your information be viewed as unreliable within your repository. You need it to be validated. You need to know who validated it and when, and you need to be able to bring that together in a single space that people can access asynchronously. A third is that people need to get access to this information that is tailored to their perspectives. You need to morph to adapt your experiences to different people's needs, different roles, different types, styles of learning. You need to be able to create an understanding for people wherever they are, meet them where they are, and be able to build an organizational knowledge set that truly reaches all of your organization. We want to enhance the capabilities of our experts. And this is a key part. I think a lot of people think that AI is coming for your job. Well, the old expression people have been saying, it's not the AI that will take your job, it's a person who uses AI will take your job. But I want to turn that phrase around a little bit. It's that if you're doing a job right now, could AI help you do that job better? And as a result, could you do more? It's one of the challenges we see with organizations. And I think it was once again brought up in that fantastic comment. My goodness, I'm going to keep referring back to it, about how that there's a perception of a lack of time. How do we make it so that this can move faster for us, and we can have an interface and capabilities so that experts can get more done with their time? I work with a major retailer up here in Canada, and I remember they agonized over which projects they should select to do each year. And they ended up picking 3 to 5 major projects for their team to engage in, but they had a docket list of like 20, 30, 40 projects that they could engage with. They picked 3 to 5 of them. Can you imagine if they could do 7 or 8 or 10? My goodness, they could get so much more done for the organization, transform faster, be more agile for the marketplace, and ultimately deliver better to their customers. And then the last is you need to unite people, creators and consumers. Break down this perception of an ivory tower and make an interactive and friendly collaborative environment where people want to be, and they feel like they're acknowledged, that they feel like they have easy access to information, that person sitting next to them who knows everything, and that they can provide feedback, that they can be part of the conversation. Very powerful and very important. So let's talk about imagine, control, morph, enhance, and unite. These 5 superpowers that you can have for workforce enablement, workforce empowering. Let's dig into each one. So when you imagine models into existence, who do you help? Well, I think particularly John is going to love this, but in some cases, Ava might also like it too. She can contribute more into this. But for the business analysts and end users, we want to get easy content creation and easy feedback for your content. So How do we do that? Well, the first is we need to have a Gen AI text to or model the model automatically generated by text blocks. A lot of people have currently developed SOPs and other sorts of practice sharing methods that are constrained not just in pictures but really most a lot of times in knowledge that's captured in text. SOPs with literally text descriptions, or from your brain it's easy for you to just sort of type out what you think. In fact, this once again lowers that barrier to entry for anyone who knows what they do to be able to just simply write it down. And by writing it down, create a transferable visual language through the BPMN format, as an example, within a repository. And now you have this ability to turn ideas into things. And here's a good example, and what we're going to talk about today, of turning on the right side a block of text into the left side, which is a picture of what that text means. So we can create this automatically and get you started with something on the page rather than having you figure it out from scratch. Once again, I think people know what their process is, particularly people who are process experts, people who are a long time in the organization. I work with a transportation company out west, and they had many employees who had been there 30 or 40 years for whom digital tools like this were not something that they were that interested in engaging with. But for them to explain it to somebody, that's something they love to do. So capture their explanations and turn them automatically into models. And then when you see them back, now you can have a conversation. I have a podcast that I record every week, and a couple of weeks ago we released an episode of this podcast, "What's Your Baseline," which involved somebody who just got started with business architecture, and a great quote came out from that, which is, "Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, doesn't matter to me. Just tell me something. The most important thing you're getting here is engagement. And even if this is wrong, that's okay, because somebody told you it's wrong, which means you have an ear, you have a collaborator, you have somebody who's willing to contribute to your knowledge set, and ultimately, you have somebody who's invested in it being correct and it being broadcast to a larger community of consumers." So turn your ideas into actual pictures, real database content through AI. The next is controlling the flow of information. What do we want to do with controlling the flow of information? Well, the truth is, well, John or Ethan loves that. Ethan, our control tower officer or process owner, loves it when we can make sure that things are validated and governed. Part of that comes through process mining, which we're not going to talk about too much today, but also part of that comes through governance automation. And we'll show you in today's conversation what it means to simply click request approval, see whether something is published or not, and quickly get into understanding the governance status so you can validate that this is correct published knowledge, and being able to have governance automation so you can minimize the human touch required for you to actually get this published to a larger community and notify them that information is available, validated, correct sources of truth information. And so this is going to help Ethan extensively with his need to control and manage a knowledge set, a canonical knowledge set for the business. And of course, look at that. Bam. I hit the request approval button and it pops into somebody's queue. We have request approvals as part of our governance workflow that makes it easy for people to get. And these are pre-built, pre-configured workflows, minimize the actual configuration required. You know who else might like that? Amy, who's having to configure everything we do. If there are pre-built things that can give her what she needs without having to do any work, well, my goodness, that is a faster way of interacting with everybody. Now, the last piece is we want to morph to adapt our experiences, which is great for Ava, and we can quickly and easily control and tailor views to different people, and we can tailor the views even for the home page. The idea is you want to make it so that anyone who comes in gets exactly what they need and no more. So if you're providing somebody access to the whole company strategy, that's great. They see the whole picture. But if you simply want them to look at their risk or applications, you morph and tailor their user interface to match their particular needs. And now that lines up so they don't have to worry, hey, am I seeing what I'm supposed to see? Yeah, their user permissioning allows you to control and manage what they see and be able to interact only with what they want. One of my clients that I really love introduced this principle to me that I've taken to the core of my heart. It's called the 3-click principle. The 3-click principle says if it takes anyone more than 3 clicks to get to what they need to know, they're not going to find it. So how can we reduce the number of clicks? We have to tailor that interface so that when you log in your role or to whatever enterprise repository knowledge set you have, your role defaults the right things to the top of your feed. You start off from a position of 3 clicks deep already. And that's really powerful. And lastly, you want to enhance the capabilities of your experts. I should sorry. Second, lastly, you want to enhance the capabilities of your experts. So you want to provide flexible tools to people like John, our designer, or Ava, our end user, who get information provided to them in ways that they can see and ways to contribute back to this information in ways that match up with their skill sets and capabilities. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about how contribution and fact sheet based data capture makes it that it's a much lower barrier to entry for people to take their knowledge and enhance what's on the page. I know we've talked about knowledge to on the page, which is going to give us a starting template from which to build. But I also said you want to make sure people give you feedback. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, just tell me something, right? This is when you tell me something, what you use to capture that something. Taking your knowledge experts and giving them something easy to work with, or your deep technology experts and giving them tools to speed up their process. Once again, it's not about having less people, it's about doing more with the people you have. And that's fantastic. These tools are built in, and those tools are really quite useful. I've talked to customers all over the world for people who use a platform like Eris. It's fantastic to be able to use these to get their knowledge out and have a wider variety of stakeholders contributing knowledge to one central space. Once again, when you lower the barrier to entry, you invite more people in from disparate groups who may have their own ways of modeling, their own types of methodologies, but at least you're bringing them together through things like fact sheets, which are representations of the information you've captured, but tailored for a different perspective. Here's a good example of how I might use a table. Okay, so I can move who this person is or this step is doing. I can be able to interact with this as a table, and I can have it auto prompt me with some ideas or some places that it might go. Different lanes in my model is a good example. So I don't have to worry about, hey, am I doing the right thing? Or hey, how does this fit into my modeling language and structure? This can speed it up and reduce the amount of mental burden required to be getting started with contributing knowledge. And lastly, we want to unite everybody. And so this should really say everyone, but for the most part, I see this a lot as Ethans and the Avas of the world. They really want to understand how everything comes together. And they want to provide or receive just-in-time business knowledge, easy navigations, and be able to ask key questions to your enterprise repository that get answered without having to require a human. That's what Ethan loves. He doesn't want to be inundated with questions he has to answer. He wants these questions to answer themselves. And Ava wants to never be left hanging. She has a question about how we do this. We have to provide that answer to her, because the truth is, if we don't, that is the first step in demotivating our workforce. I had to do something. I didn't know how to. I looked for the answer and it couldn't be found. That's it. I log off. I'm no longer part of this process. That's sad. So, how do we do that? We want to use tools like AI to power up a search function, something that combs our own content and feeds it back to us in ways that are really, really exciting. For me, the retrieval augmented generation of Gen AI allows us to literally have an AI learn about our business and then act as that advisor, that person sitting next to you that really truly knows everything. And of course, show you where you can find more information. And that leads to a whole published environment with change management to notify and control the information, but truly an integrated space for everyone to come in and see what they need, find what they need when they need it. And I really like how we do that with Eris. I love it. But all of this is just talk. We're saying, hey, these are all things you should do. What if I could show it to you? Here's a good example of adding something that I wanted to have in my model, or searching the repository for exactly what I wanted and having it provide that knowledge to me. But in today's conversation, we're going to do give you a demonstration of how this might also work by showing you how it could actually go in action with an example process. So if you will permit me to center you in this fictitious scenario. Take yourselves into the world and mind of somebody who is trying to capture the way that you request leave at your company. For years, it's been passed around as sage knowledge. How do I request leave? Oh, yeah, you got to talk to this person. You got to do this thing. Yeah, submit this form. Oh, yeah, no problem. Tell your friends. Mm-mm-mm. Let's institutionalize that knowledge. In fact, we've captured this knowledge already. It's on a SharePoint page. So first you submit leave, then the supervisor reviews the thing, the manager approves it. Then you so this is our own. This is actually my own SharePoint. Great, fantastic. But this is not very transportable. It's just a bunch of block of text here and a little picture at the bottom. I don't like this, right? So what I want to do here is capture this knowledge in a new way. And I want to integrate it with the rest of the environment, bring it into the context of the enterprise. So let's just take this text here and copy it. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a new process, a little leave process. Let's create a new model for how we might do leave management. And let's name it over here. I'm going to put it over here in my example for the webinar, of course. And let's go over here and create our leave management process. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the tool in Eris to paste in that block of text that I just copied. Once again, before it looked a little bit like this, but now I can simply say, hey, can you generate for me a new process based on this text? So I can start typing my process description. I can whatever. I can ask it to create a generic process based off of standards. I can do lots of different things. But for me, I have this old process that somebody wrote down and put on a SharePoint. You paste that in, right? And I would say generate a model for me based on this. And it's going to take a few seconds to look through and read my process. Hey, how does this work? Is this correct? Here, who's responsible for each thing? And in a matter of seconds, look, it's generated this draft for me. I can read it through. Okay, submit leave request, review leave request, access, impact, assess it, it's approve or reject, and then here's some. You know what? Let me just insert that into my model. And look, now this is literally ready to go process. Now, it could be correct, or I could maybe want to, change some things about it. Maybe this is not correctly named. I can harmonize it with my enterprise workforce listing, my organizational structure. That's fine. I can have shared services or applications that it's an HR system. I can replace that with whatever my actual HR system is. Great. I can get this done. But look at how fast that was to generate this nice model that sometimes would have taken you hours to make yourself. And maybe this isn't entirely right, but that's fine. Once again, just tell me something, because this will give us a starting point for discussion. And now I can pass this over to a manager. I can go through, wait, let's go through an approval process here. As you can see here, this process is entirely fully operable. I can go and add more steps in that weren't captured. I can new events. I can do whatever. I can add new lanes here that I didn't properly think about. But if I understand the methodology, at least I know that we're starting from something. It's not blank. You're not starting from a blank canvas anymore. And it certainly doesn't look like this anymore. That's something you could actually follow. Okay, so employee submits leave request, then submit leave request, review the relief, assess the impact, and it's approved, approve the request, reject request. Then we communicate the approval, update the tracking systems, request stage. Well, look at that. I can actually follow along. But I can also reconfigure this to match what I need. Remember that we're also tailoring this interface. So throughout this whole process, the leave process also has the ability to be seen as, for instance, a series of steps. Activation request, review, assess the impact, either it's approved or rejected. So now I can see this now as a model I can interact with, and I can provide feedback on. I can open up a collaboration conversation with a model owner and say something about this. I can comment, tag people, at Philip Huck, hey, my co-presenter, I think we need an automation in the impact assessment. And I can post that. Philip Hack's going to get tagged, and he'll get a notification, an email saying, hey, you need to come in here and take a look at this, maybe improve that. And I have the ability to now collaborate as well as contribute. So I can go over here and say assess impact, and I'll go over here and contribute to this model and add more things. I can add a, let's say, add a screenshot. Here's my impact assessment. Here's my scoring rubric. I can add a document, a video explaining how this scoring rubric is done. Excellent. So now I can actually provide an operational job aid through this by simply enhancing the fidelity. I can also go in and add risks or controls, or as I said, an IT system over here. I can add it into this step. I want to do this process using a system called my assessment tool. And it's going to be a new system that I'm going to add in my thing. I'm going to create that item. And now someone coming in can see that there's an assessment tool involved in assessing the impact. It can even be defined as a requirement and sent out to our enterprise architecture team to evaluate this, or an architecture review board to evaluate whether or not an assessment tool is useful. So now I've contributed to this model as an end user without having to do any work other than type in a few characters or say a comment back to one of the people who owns this and ask them to do something about it. This is our sort of collaborative space we're creating. And if I'm an expert user, I can come into here and see this model just like I did before as a table. And here are all the table components. Here's the containers it belongs to, the descriptions. Let's say I wanted to increase the fidelity of this information. I say, I also want to make sure I'm adding my application systems that it supports. So I can say, oh, this prepare handover document is supported by, I don't know, an application system called handover management. And I can see, hey, look, handover management is an application system that's added over here to my model. And it's really powerful to meet me where I am. So as an end consumer or knowledge expert, I can simply type things in to a chat. As an expert user, I can come in and add it to a spreadsheet. And that's really powerful. Speeds up my process of development and ultimately preparing for approval. And that's where we come in with the approval side of things, because the truth is that you want to make sure that leave management is approved. And right now, leave management, I mean, it actually isn't approved. I'm going to go into my leave management process, and I can see that it hasn't yet been published. I'm going to see a little notification up here. And sure, it's been designed. Simplification request, review it, assess the impact, approve or reject, these sorts of things. But it's not published. It's not available to my users. Oh, interesting. So how do I solve that problem? Well, the answer is we have a mini workflow already built in, these automated workflows that are part of ARIS process governance, or any tool you have. Governing your process with automation is really important. That helps reduce the human effort required to manage the large set of information within your organization. Let me request approval here, and I'm just going to say, yeah, okay. I want to request an approval, initiate the process. It's going to say, would you like to give a little bit of information about this model? This is a new version with the assessment impact tool included, like I said before. I'll send that out, and it's going to request approval for me. I'm going to get a notification based on this, and I can quickly go and approve. Right now it says not published, but let's go and see if there's anything waiting for me. Wait, what's that over here? I got a little task up here in my queue. It says, could you please come in and review this model and perhaps even approve it? So I say, yes, I'd like to approve this model. It's waiting for approval. I can show that version in the portal. I can take a look at it so I can review the model. Is this correct? And I'm seeing a little fact sheet here that's about it. Yeah, that's correct. Is this that looks good to me? Yep, sounds good. I think this is right. So I'm going to go over here and say, yep, yes, this is correct. And I'll approve that. So now, with the approval done, look, my tasks are clear. Everyone likes to see an empty task list. And now I'm going to go back to my leave management process, which has now been gone through the approval and been approved. And I can see whether or not this leave, oh, look at that. It's now published. And I, as an end user, now have some certainty that this process is validated and correct. Once again, trust is an incredibly valuable currency. And so you want to make sure that people trust the information they're getting by knowing that it's been validated and published by the governance forces of business approvers. Once again, the people like Ethan, our owner, love this because it was a very small amount of work for them to go through and validate and approve it. They only got notified when it was time for them to come in, and they've inspired trust in a larger community of consumers who can go see this. But now, speaking about that larger community of consumers, this is a hard thing to read if you don't understand BPMN. And in fact, you may not even know where you want to go. So let's ask this question. Go back to my home screen here. Let's ask a question of the AI. So there's an AI companion up here that I have, and I want to ask, what's our process for leave management? I'm an end user. I want to ask the person sitting next to me, how do I do leave management? And the person sitting next to me says, well, the process for leave management is depicted in this model, leave management. But let me summarize that for you. I can tell you some of the steps in our leave management process. Or I can tell you where you can go to get this information. Okay, I can go for leave management. Well, what happens once a leave, once an approval is received? And it can look through the leave management process and say, oh, well, once approval is received, the process moves to the communicate approval function. Oh, okay. Well, who is responsible for communicate approval? Yes. And it's responsible of the manager. And look at that. I self-service with AI all of my questions for today. Here's a model that I need to find. Here's what happens after I do leave management. Here's who I need to talk to. And at no point in time have I had to do anything other than type in text and read back the answers. And if I want to find it, of course, everything is clickable. Leave management is a process. I click on leave management. It shows me the diagram preview, all those sorts of things. Keep the companion open. It's super easy for me. So this is how we once again democratize BPM. It's something we keep talking about here at Software AG, is that you need to lower that barrier to entry, people being involved, either in the creation of a process, in the evaluation and publishing of a process, the contribution to that process, or finding the information that's captured within that process. And all those together provide a fantastic source for workforce enablement. What this means is at the end of the day, you have people coming together with real knowledge to be able to do their jobs, ask more about what their job is, get feedback on how the processes are supposed to go, and be able to support each other in the collective practice enablement of BPM within your organization. There's some key capabilities we've introduced to make that happen. Modeling and contribution, like you seen. A central modeling repository within which everything is stored. Content analysis that can help people understand things and refactor it in ways that matter to them. Publication and collaboration to take that governance and publish it, make it accessible, and for people to give not only feedback and actually change things about their process from their perspective with their expertise. Governance workflow automation to be able to control and manage that flow of information as people create new knowledge and add it to the repository. Dashboards and visualizations to help people understand the population of content, including integrating dashboards from things like process mining to understand, as someone mentioned a little bit before, conformance. Are people actually doing what they're doing? Simulation and scenario planning to try and plan a better future. What might happen if we were to change this process and how can we improve it? And lastly, confirmation management, which asks the question, have you seen this yet? Being able to automate and put periodically a process of notifying people to come in and see the latest changes in their business processes. And all this comes together to form the core of a workforce enablement system. I think that system is Eris. It's our AI-infused business transformation suite for operational excellence that is sustainable and builds compliance into everything you do. You have process intelligence as a lifecycle maintained from strategy and design to operationalizing processes to execution to monitoring and management, to data ingestion, analysis, and improvement. And I think we do that particularly well with Eris. And I would argue that in this modern world, we want all those things put together so that we have the tools we need to make meaningful change stick in the chaotic environment that most organizations are steeped in. But that's 45 minutes of me talking at you, a little bit of feedback. I appreciate people coming in with their questions and things like that during the conversation, or at least their thoughts during the conversation about some challenges that they've had. But now comes the second piece of our audience feedback and interaction, which is our Q&A. So for those of you who've been watching along, I'm happy to show you some more of what we can do and how we do it, or some more thoughts on how we might want to do it to enable our workforce with excellence in our BPM governance, excellence in our BPM environment, and excellence with our AI-powered enablement tools. And for that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, go back to you, just my face, and see if anyone has any questions in the chat, or if you want to ask questions. We have a couple in our Q&A tab. So the first question, I'm going to highlight this over here, and of course you can ask these questions even as we go. It's fine. First question we have here is from Wagner Lozano. My friend Wagner, it's a pleasure to see you today on our webinar. The question is, how can we combine KPIs to verify the performance and effectiveness of BPM? Great question. So there's a few different questions that sort of come out of that. The first is where those KPIs are coming from. From my perspective, a lot of those KPI values come from process mining. So a process mining might come in and tell you the actual performance of a business process. Now, in Eris process mining, as a tool for a lot of organizations to understand their process performance, we have what's called calculated columns, or analysis, and whole analysis module. In that analysis module, you tell Eris what you'd like to calculate and where that data will come from. So what combination of attribute values represent the outcome that you're looking to measure. It's a formula, a mathematical formula for how you calculate a particular KPI, combining them into a macro KPI. We do that exceptionally well in Eris in two ways. Number one is a visual math editor, so you don't have to learn how to code, which gives you a great tool to combine a series of KPIs into something that's relevant for you. Second is we have Gen AI to generate code if you actually want to do that, combining some number of KPIs into one macro KPI to determine the effectiveness. Once you've determined that KPI through the analysis and Eris process mining, it's simple to put that on a dashboard and flash that as an executive overview on the home page of Eris. That's a fantastic question, and I think we do that particularly well. Another question we have from someone over there. By the way, you can ask your questions anonymously. Don't worry about that. I'm not going to judge you for not wanting to put your name up on screen here. How does this interact with our existing learning and development systems? We already have a training tool in place. Would this replace that? That's a great question. There's a couple parts to this question and a couple parts to this answer, so forgive me for a little bit longer of an explanation. The answer is no and yes. So why no? So training tools are often much more practical, sort of tool level training with the clicks and a script that you go through in order to actually execute against a process in a system. I work with tools like UPerform or Solution Manager, SAP Enable Now. Those tools are really good at what they do. They are training tools on specific tool functions, and we would not necessarily replace those because for the most part, they're where they need to be. They're embedded into the sort of learning environment for using your enterprise tools. We would inform those though, and that's really important. Informing people is a key part of how you build this this sort of like integrated environment of design to execution. You want to inform people about your inform people executor or the training people about what the process was as designed. So you want to take the requirements and turn that into something that they can operationalize. So more seamlessly transporting between your BPM repository and the existing learning and development tools is powerful and something we're capable of doing. However, why do I say yes? So I said no, but no and. So we can do lots of things to support it. Why do I say yes? So the answer with yes is because some tool or some trainings, some learning and development is more methodological learning and development or practical learning and development for a business process. How do you engage the customer when you're sitting in front of them at the screen? Or how do you what's a call script that you follow if somebody calls you and has a problem with one of your devices? I actually work with a big technology company in the South who uses Eris as their operational job aid, where their call scripts are essentially contained in Eris and people click through them. That's a yes. Now this becomes part of learning and development because the process is contained within Eris, and you use the publishing portal as a tool for learning and development and just-in-time knowledge as people are looking to operationalize their processes. So in some capacity, it does replace a portion of learning and development, or it augments it, or it's a tool that is used by your learning and development professionals. They say, hey, you want to know how this process works? We've captured that in Eris, and you can interact with it asynchronously to learn how it works yourself. So that's a great question, and I like it a lot. The next question we have is here from my good friend. I don't know you, but I'll give you a thumbs up. I think that's a nice question. Does the Copilot work only with process models, or can it analyze the entire architecture? Thanks for the question, Patricio. The answer is it can analyze the entire architecture. Essentially, it indexes all of your models and objects and connections and attributes and assignments. So if you have like an organizational chart, you can ask it who reports to whom. Great. It's going to follow through the organizational chart and find the relationships between those people and be able to kick back a response to you. Great. If you have an IT system landscape, you can ask what system connects to this system. It can find the relationships based on the relational database model within Eris, indexing all of the content you've created through the painstaking work of the enterprise architecture team into a single question that you ask and get answered immediately. So that's a fantastic way of creating a knowledge repository for all, not just for your BPM professionals. I talk a lot about operational excellence. I talk a lot about BPM. I mean, sue me. I happen to love it. But it exists within an enterprise ecosystem that includes all sorts of other information that's really important, including things like risk and compliance. All of this gets indexed by the AI, and all of this becomes available through questions and answers to the AI. So great question, Patricio. I appreciate that very much. I see a question from somebody who seems like they use Eris. Thanks, friend. Is process intelligence available in Eris 10SR26? Everything you've seen today was shown to you in Eris 10SR26. So our June release, which is now a month old and I think is rolling out to a lot of people, Eris 10SR26 is already able to go live, and all of this is already available for some things. Now there's stuff you have to turn on. There's some technical configuration things that you should talk to your customer success manager, talk to your professional services team, get in touch with your sales folks. I mean, get in touch with Software AG. We can help you out. But yes, all these capabilities I'm showing you are on my 10SR26 instance. So what you've seen is currently in production for us. There are training material. There's training material that is being developed to be sent out. There already is a 10SR26 Delta training that has already gone out, I know, internally. So you can ask about that Delta training. It's a great way of getting that information. And alongside that, I was just talking to your customer success managers for readiness assessments. There's readiness assessments and health checks and things like that they do periodically as part of their professional competency. So a great place to go for all of those things. Mark these as answered. I have one more question here before we reach the 55-minute mark, and I say perhaps we can have it say it nice. How do we? This is a great one here. How do we prevent everyone in the company from making process models with AI and causing our repository to become too big to manage? Okay, I see you've been scarred too. Uh, love you for this question. It's good. It's a good question. The answer is that you need to create a development environment that is separate from your production environment and have governance processes to automatically transport things that go through the governance process to a place that's more visible. However, expect that your development environment might become big. Here's the thing. I'd rather people sketch out a million processes in a dev environment in their own in own little areas and sort of segmented sandboxes with permissions to make sure that not everyone sees them right away and feel like they can become involved, even if some percentage of those processes never see the light of day, rather than telling people that you can't, you shan't, you're not allowed. And that's completely demotivating. So, what I would say is let people cause chaos, but use governance to control that chaos, and then have a published environment that is clean of that chaos and make people feel like they can put real information in the tool, make people feel good doing it, so give them great feedback, and then govern and control it so that the canonical data set that appears for people as what our business does is just what has been approved by the key stakeholders in the business, including people like Ethan, our owner, we talked about earlier. Excellent, excellent question for folks who are looking for this. I'm going to unshare this question from folks. We have a couple more minutes left. I do see a couple more questions. If you're wondering about the SR26 module for process mining, it is, let me go to learn.softwareag.com. I can strongly suggest you go to learn.softwareag.com. It's our learning portal. And you can find, actually, I'll share my screen as I'm doing this because this is kind of cool. Oops, there we are, screen share. I will share my learning portal here. It's a great learn.softwareag.com, which is a great tool for everyone. You can simply click on Eris, and we got lots of self-paced trainings for associates and professionals and experts, including lots of technical training, things you can use. And you see lots of these Delta trainings. I don't know if the SI24 Delta training is quite up on this yet. SI26 Delta training is on it yet, but I would encourage you to look at learn.softwareag.com, follow it along. Some of these things are really cool and also, once again, sort of free, like Eris Modeler Essentials. This course is literally a free self-paced course that you can just go through, and it's 16 hours of content, which is amazing, that you can do whenever you want it. So it's a great place to start if you want to actually learn how to model. But once again, the AI can help to sort of to buttress that, and make it so you have to do less of this. But as I said, learn.softwareag.com is a great place to start with that conversation. Great question, and I would keep your eyes peeled to that. People are asking about getting evaluation versions to play around. Get in touch with your sales representatives, your account executives, or your customer success managers. Both of those people, customer success managers and account executives, have access to give you a little bit more and work on getting you things like evaluation copies or proof of concepts or things like that. I think that's a great place to start with the conversation around how this might work for your organization and show it to your stakeholders. Get feedback. Provide us feedback. My goodness, we're always learning as well. So we've got really great things, and also a quick pitch for things like customer advisory boards or our IUG, International User Group. If you haven't been to those before, they're great places to give us feedback on how our product works and how you want to see it work in the future. So if you haven't gotten in touch with those people, please do so. I'll mark that as answered as well. Any other questions that I missed in my Q&A tab? I appreciate some people kicking it back for my BPM walks. Just a quick plug for that. If you haven't gone to the Eris page on LinkedIn and liked that, please do so after this conversation. My goodness, please go to LinkedIn, find the Eris company, which is one of the great places that you can go to and take a look at, and then you'll find some things from me pretty frequently. The Eris page has what are called BPM walks, which are where I walk around my neighborhood or someplace that I've gone and ponder a question of the day. They're a 1 minute video that gets you started on how to think about some of the things we talked about today and things that are not as part of today, that you want to maybe see in the next conversation. Thank you again for coming today. Once again, leave us great feedback on this webinar as well so we can continuously improve. And hopefully, we'll see you in the next of our 5 tips series on how to operationalize process intelligence and make your BPM practice truly succeed with Eris. Have a great one, folks, and thanks for coming.